Today, my friends, is often called Gaudete Sunday, which means rejoice. And it's a second reading talks about rejoice. And they changed the color, my friends, because they want to, when you change it, they wanted it to stand out saying that we're 2 weeks left to go. Just 2 more Sundays or 2 weeks left for Christmas. And that's why they use a different color to try to bring us that awareness. And don't I look pretty? You know, my friends, when I read the second reading and the readings this past week, it says, "May the peace of God guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." May your peace be in your mind and your heart. It sounds like a birthday card or a Christmas card, doesn't it? All of us. If you get Christmas cards and you send them, peace is in that word somewhere in the cards. May the Christ child bring you peace. All these beautiful things. May the peace of goodwill, and all nice. But how do we get that, my friends? Because certainly peace is not really the feeling that we would express this time of year, would we? With everything that is demanded upon us, peace wouldn't be how we would describe ourselves. And yet that's what the gospel the reading is today. Peace. Right before it says 2 things. Prayer and thanksgiving. Prayer and thanksgiving. There was a Christian author, his name was David McCashlin, was driving, and there was a car alongside the road, and he went to help them. There was a woman, and she says to him, she was kind of startled, and she said to him, "Sir, I can't get it started, but if you jiggle the wire in the battery while I turn the key in the ignition, it'll work." And so she jumps in the car, and he grabs these wires. The whole thing came out. And he said to her, "Well, look, ma'am," he said, "the terminal needs to be tightened." He said, "I can fix it if you give me a few minutes." And she said, "You know, sir, I'm in a hurry. My husband said, if you just jingle the wire, it works. Jingle the wires so I can be on my way." It sounds like us, my friends, don't we? We don't have time to pray. We just want to get our stuff done and move on, right? He says to her, "Ma'am, I can jingle the wire and your car will start. The next time you go to start your car, guess what? You're going to have to jiggle the wire. And the next time after that, you're going to have to jingle the wire. It'll take me 5 minutes to fix it. Why don't you wait?" Reluctantly, she did. And of course, he fixed it. But I thought, we don't want to take the time to do something that is beneficial to us, do we? Take a few minutes, my friends, just to decompress. What a wonderful thing to do this time of year. It's the first ingredient. One piece, you need to decompress. Turn to prayer. And if you don't know how to pray, my friends, just pray one of your favorite prayers. Start small, 2-3 minutes, And you have to be careful, like with me, I spend the time, but you got to watch it. When you're in prayer, you start thinking about everything else you need to do, right? You got to be careful of that. And that's not good either. The second thing is thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. There's the word Eucharist means actually thanksgiving, is actually what it means. And I was reading an article, it was written by Jennifer Hubbard. Jennifer Hubbard is one of the mothers her daughter was in that Sandy Hook shooting. Horrible. But there was a group of Catholics that were involved with that and the parish, and they're wonderful articles. But they went through such tremendous suffering and tragedy, of course. But she was talking about all these mothers and families were very devout, and their world came apart when, of course, that shooting occurred, and her first-grade daughter was killed in that. And she said for weeks on end, she would come to Mass, and she said she would just be there. She would just be there. And then one day the priest spoke these words that he does at every Mass. And I've been saying these words every day, my friends, for over 21 years. I say these words. Every day I say them for 21 years. And what she wrote in there, just like, wow. Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke the bread, gave it to his disciples. You've heard those words every time you come to Mass. Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke the bread, gave it to his disciples. Jesus took the chalice and once again gave thanks, gave it to his disciples. Jesus took the chalice and once again gave thanks and gave it to his disciples. What's he doing, my friends? Giving thanks? Giving thanks for what? His disciple just betrayed him right at the meal, probably 5 minutes before this took place. And as Jennifer wrote, Jesus is preparing to be beaten, bruised, and nailed to a cross. And what's he doing? He's giving thanks. You know, my friends, we complain, we grumble about everything and everyone in our life, don't we? We complain about everything and most horribly, everyone in our life. Are we ever grateful, my friends? Do we ever point out good things about our spouse, our children, our work, our church? Do we ever do it, my friends? Is it any wonder we have any peace in our hearts, my friends? We're grateful for absolutely nothing or no one. But what a powerful thing when we can do that. And that's what Jesus is teaching us. How powerful it is to look at your spouse and start seeing some positive points in him or her, or your children, or your work, or the church. What a powerful thing, because it changes our attitude and perspective. A simple little change of thought pattern does so much. And that's what Jesus is doing. He took bread, gave thanks. Gave thanks because he knew by giving thanks it would get him through the most horrible thing that he's ever had to face in his life. And it would do the same for us. Thanksgiving is done in two ways here at church, with actual words, and there's another way. When something happens to us, my friends, we say, the worst thing happened to me. We say that, don't we? The worst thing happened to me. And then we kind of go downtown. So you have worse, W-O-R-S-E. And if something gets worser or worsest, what's that word called? Worst, right? It's a play on words, W-O-R-S-T. So you have something bad that happens, and then something really bad that happens is over here, worst. But there's a word in between those two, and you know what that is? Between worse and worst. Somebody at 8 o'clock knew what that word was that fits in. If you look in a dictionary, there's a word that is in between those two words. You crossword puzzles should know this. Worship. Worship. Isn't that amazing? Worship is in between worse and worst. If we learn to sing, and our good choir, my friends, they know it up there. They know it well, what singing does to you, what singing does. And that's the last thing we want to do when something happens to us is sing. We come in here to Mass, oh, I got all this stuff to do. If we sing, it's amazing what it would do. And yet how hard it is for us to do it. But the choir can tell you, everyone up there can tell you what singing does for them. Can't you, choir? Yeah, they're all bowing their heads. But it's true, they know, they get it. It's amazing what singing does. It's these little things, my friends, in our life that are biblical principles that could help us in our day-to-day living. And they do wonderful things because they change our perspective and attitudes. What started me thinking about that was when I was reading it, I read an article about Raphael Schechter. He was a Jewish conductor that was placed in the Terezin concentration camp. And I never heard of Terezin, but there was a lot of these concentration camps. We only know the few large ones. But he started teaching his prisoners a requiem, Verdi. Verdi, one of those large composers, he was teaching them one of their hymns in Latin. And he initially did it because this hymn talks about freedom and God's punishment. It's all in Latin, but those are the words when you translate it. But what happened to those group of prisoners was amazing. He transformed the camp because once they started to sing, they started to have a better perspective on life. So out of misery, they sang, and they escaped it through their song. And it can do the same for us, my friends. So as we have 2 more weeks left before Christmas, my friends, an incredible, hectic time. If we want the peace that Jesus promises in that reading, may we turn to prayer, may we turn to thanksgiving, and may we turn to song. God bless you.